On a snowy winter night, Nasa Yuzaki is lying on the street bleeding. During a time he believes he's going to die, he recalls his life, remembering how he was ridiculed for his unusual name and how he devoted his life to studying, wanting to attend an elite school. But before he was set to take the entrance exam, he was hit by a truck when he crossed the street trying to speak to a girl named Tsukasa Tsukuyomi. However, Nasa survived due to her intervention. After regaining consciousness, Nasa chased after Tsukasa, wanting to go out with her as gratitude for saving his life, and Tsukasa agreed only if they got married when they were old enough to do so. After getting discharged from the hospital, he took the entrance exam the following year, but decided to work instead of attend high school, hoping to come across Tsukasa. Shortly after turning 18, Tsukasa shows up at his apartment to fill out the marriage registration and submit it to the bureau to make the marriage official. Tsukasa has brought her belongings in a backpack, terrifying Nasa, who is nervous to have a girl sleep in his apartment. Nasa tries to figure out where Tsukasa will sleep since he has one bed that is only big enough for one person. The two go shopping for a bed and return with a futon for Tsukasa to sleep on. During the night, Tsukasa, who is a reckless sleeper, moves constantly and gets up to drink some water. Still asleep, she inadvertently pulls Nasa's comforter off his bed when she returns, leaving Nasa in the cold for the rest of the night. After waking up the next morning, Tsukasa prepares breakfast while telling Nasa to not be formal with her. With the apartment lacking a bathtub, Tsukasa and Nasa head out to a bathhouse after having breakfast. Nasa introduces Tsukasa to Kaname Arisugawa, Nasa's former underclassman, who runs the bathhouse along with her older sister Aya. After Kaname enters the men's side, she asks Nasa about his relationship and expresses her disapproval, while demanding him to make Tsukasa happy. Over on the women's side, Tsukasa meets Aya, who attempts to provide good customer service by scrubbing Tsukasa's back. After bathing, Tsukasa gets to know more about Aya, as she was Tsukasa's classmate in middle school. After the two pass a chapel with an ongoing wedding, Nasa rushes off to take care of an errand while asking Tsukasa to return home. On the way back home, a girl from inside a limousine watches Tsukasa, calling her sister. Tsukasa returns to the apartment, and shortly after arriving, her foster sister, Chitose Kajinoji, knocks on the door after tailing her. Chitose is informed that Tsukasa is married, much to her disbelief. Nasa returns home and is greeted by Chitose, who kidnaps him and takes him to her family's mansion after finding out that he is Tsukasa's husband. She comes up with a scheme to break up the marriage by having her maids Charlotte and Aurora use tabloid journalism against him. While Chitose argues with the maids, Nasa slips out and tries to hide, but is found by Charlotte. While trying to get Nasa to submit, Charlotte accidentally breaks the nitrogen casing that preserves Tsukasa's precious moon rock, and Nasa uses his knowledge to fix it temporarily. Chitose then lashes out at Nasa about him not really knowing who Tsukasa is and claiming that she is the only person who can make her dream come true. Aurora creates a scandalous photo, but Tsukasa arrives to confiscate it. Tsukasa and Nasa escape the mansion through a secret passage, finding themselves in a church. They then share their first kiss. Nasa and Tsukasa visit an electronics store to shop for a TV. Later at the bathhouse, Nasa tells Kaname about his verbal commitment to Tsukasa, which she tells him that it is important for him to buy an engagement ring. After leaving the bathhouse, the two stop by at a nearby park and kiss while Charlotte and Aurora secretly observe them. That night, Nasa learns the difference between engagement and wedding rings. Afterwards, Nasa insists that he has to buy a diamond ring. The next day, the two go shopping in Omotesando, and Nasa is shocked at the price tag for a Honey Winston diamond ring, but is talked into buying one until Tsukasa drags him out of the store. Tsukasa tells Nasa that she does not want him to spend his savings on a ring. Instead, the two stop by at a jeweler in Okachimachi with affordable diamond rings, but the price is still too much to get Nasa to understand. Eventually, they end up buying a pair of cheap diamond rings, and Tsukasa expresses her appreciation on their way home. One night, Tsukasa rolls into Nasa's bed after drinking some water. This prompts Nasa to think about moving into a bigger apartment the next morning, despite Tsukasa being fine with her current living arrangements. That night, Nasa makes a pitch about the benefits of moving to Tsukasa, but realizes that he needs his parents to be his guarantor. Having not informed them about the marriage, Nasa calls his parents to inform them that she married the girl he had talked to them about. The next day, Nasa chats with his mother, who asks them to come visit them in Nara. Tsukasa decides that she wants to turn this trip into their honeymoon with a stop in Kyoto. Tsukasa buys a camera, and that night the two set out on their trip on a bus with Chitose and her maids tailing them. The bus makes a stop at a service area with Chitose and her maids looking for a way to break up Tsukasa's relationship with Nasa. At the service area, Tsukasa tries the lime udon that she heard about through a TV show, but finds it disappointing. Cameramen from a TV station enter the service area, prompting Tsukasa and Nasa to quickly return to the bus, not wanting their relationship to go public. The next morning, the bus arrives in Kyoto. Chitose manages to separate the two by having her maids take Tsukasa to the manga museum she had been wanting to visit, leaving Nasa to go on a date with Chitose as a test to determine if he is worthy of being Tsukasa's husband. While Nasa admits that he does not know about Tsukasa as Chitose does, he manages to convince her by talking about the accident and various mathematical principles. Chitose and her maids return to Tokyo, though Nasa is not convinced that Chitose has given up on sabotaging their relationship. Tsukasa and Nasa arrive in Nara to visit Nasa's mother Kanoka and father Enishi, as Nasa explains that he was raised in Tokyo and his parents moved to Nara for his father's archaeological excavation. As Nasa takes a bath, Tsukasa talks with Enishi in private. The next morning, Tsukasa is brought into Enishi's office, which is filled with books, and she expresses her interest in history. After breakfast, Tsukasa and Nasa go sightseeing in Nara, and one of the stops is the site of the former Heijo Palace. During their conversation the previous night, Enishi had thanked Tsukasa for saving Nasa's life and entrusted her to look after him. Tsukasa and Nasa leave Nara that night and arrive in Tokyo the next morning, only to find their apartment burned down. Unaffected by the incident, Nasa explains to Tsukasa that all his important papers and belongings are secure in a bank, while his important information is stored in the cloud. They then decide to head to the bathhouse. When Nasa explains the situation to Kaname, she suggests that he and Tsukasa stay at the bathhouse until they find a new place. Later that day, Kaname wonders how Aya is going to react given that she has a crush on Nasa. It is revealed that Aya is still oblivious about Nasa's marriage until her mother brings it up. Several days later, Nasa and Tsukasa head to the laundromat. They then head to Harajuku to buy Tsukasa some new clothes. Tsukasa and Nasa settle into their temporary home, and during dinner, Nasa compliments Tsukasa's cooking. The next day, Nasa's landlord offers him a unit in the new apartment complex under construction on the site where his old apartment burned down for the same rate. Tsukasa and Nasa check out the model for the new apartment, located in a luxury high-rise hotel, and are impressed by its amenities. However, they were sent to the wrong one after all. After visiting the luxury hotel apartment, Tsukasa lets Nasa know that her home is wherever he is. Sometime later, Tsukasa decides to help out with chores at the bathhouse, and Kaname thanks Tsukasa for saving Nasa. That night, Tsukasa and Nasa go grocery shopping, and on the way back, they take a detour to Otogi Park to have a romantic moment together. Chitose and her maids find out that Nasa and Tsukasa's apartment burned down. When Chitose asks Tsukasa where she is living now, Tsukasa lies in order to get away from her. When Tsukasa arrives at the bathhouse, she notices several video game consoles and Nasa staring at a takoyaki plate. Once he learns what it is, Nasa decides to throw a takoyaki party. Just then, Chitose arrives with her maids and attempts to bribe Tsukasa by promising to buy a few consoles, which Aya overhears. Aya then wonders if Tsukasa can really cook. After she enjoys Tsukasa's cooking, everyone plays Street Fighter V Champion Edition. Tsukasa, Aya, and Chitose later agree to have a tournament where Nasa has to do anything the winner asks. After Aya wins it, Tsukasa decides to play the original Street Fighter against her, which Tsukasa easily wins. As such, they form a bond. Once the party is over, Tsukasa kisses Nasa, revealing that was what she planned to do if she won the tournament. Nasa overexerts himself doing work and catches a cold. Despite insisting that he is fine, Tsukasa tells him to rest. Nasa, concerned with infecting Tsukasa, feels guilty for her having to worry over him. She assures him that it is fine and cares for him over the night. Nasa wakes up the next morning feeling better, much to Tsukasa's relief, who reveals she was actually worried for him. Sometime later, Tsukasa and Nasa put on yukatas and attend the summer festival. There they eat takoyaki, meet Aya and Chitose at the goldfish scooping game, and pray at the shrine. The night concludes with Tsukasa and Nasa watching the fireworks show with Kaname, Aya, Chitose, and her maids.